Let's talk about the most powerful and probably most invisible weapon in the world today. It's a weapon that can reach anywhere on the planet. It's wielded not by soldiers, but by lawyers. And it gives the United States a kind of control that no army ever could. And the craziest part? Most people have absolutely no idea it even exists. And it all starts with this one simple but incredibly powerful idea. This quote really gets to the heart of it. The moment any transaction anywhere in the world touches a US dollar, it is, for all intents and purposes, on American soil. And that means it's subject to American law. That, right there, changes everything. So, picture this. It's February 2022. Russian tanks are crossing into Ukraine. The world is watching in horror. But just a few days later, the single most effective counterattack doesn't come from a missile silo. It comes from an office building in Manhattan. A US Treasury lawyer with just a few keystrokes effectively freezes the assets of one of the world's most powerful men. His yachts, his mansions, even his mistress's credit card. Poof, all of it, frozen solid. Which brings us to the big question we're going to unpack here. How on earth is that possible? How can a single bureaucrat in New York reach across the planet and just turn off a dictator's access to his fortune? Well, to get that, we need to pop the hood on the global economy and see how the engine really works. So, let's start with that first piece of the puzzle. The whole concept rests on this idea that a dictator's fortune, even when it's spread all over the world, isn't actually safe. It can be frozen from thousands of miles away. To understand how, you really have to get your head around just how ridiculously dominant the US dollar is. I mean, it's not just America's currency, it's the world's currency. Just look at these numbers. A massive 60% of all the money that countries keep in their national savings accounts, it's in dollars. When anyone trades currencies, 88% of the time, the dollar is on one side of that trade. It's literally the language of global money. And there's a name for this, dollar hegemony. The best way to think about it is like plumbing. If the dollar is the water that flows through the pipes of the global economy, then the US controls the pipes. It controls the main valves. And it gets to decide who gets water and when to turn off the tap. And here is the secret. This is the critical choke point. If a company in, say, China wants to pay a company in Germany using dollars, that digital money, even for just a millisecond, has to pass through a bank in the United States. It has to touch American soil. And in that one moment, that's it, the US government has jurisdiction. That's the vulnerability that makes this whole weapon possible. Okay, so we've got this incredible global reliance on the dollar, and it creates a choke point. So next up, let's look at the actual tools, the hidden plumbing, if you will, that turns this financial fact into a powerful weapon. You know, this chart really shows you how the game has completely changed. We're so used to thinking about power as troops and tanks and generals, but this is a whole different kind of warfare. It's totally invisible, it's fought by lawyers in cubicles, and their weapons aren't bombs, they're lists. And the people pulling the levers are from a tiny, little-known agency inside the Treasury Department called OFAC, the Office of Foreign Assets Control. And their main job is to maintain a list, the Specially Designated Nationals List, or SDN list. And you've got to understand, this list is the weapon. And get this, there are roughly 12,000 names on that list. Individuals, companies, even charities. We're talking terrorists, drug lords, Russian oligarchs, and anybody caught doing business with them. If your name ends up on that list, you're not just cut off from the US, you're basically a financial ghost. You are erased from the global economy. So what does it actually look like when this weapon is fired, when a name gets added to the list? Let's walk through a few real-world examples to see just how powerful a simple list can be. So check this out. Back in 2005, the US went after this tiny, obscure bank in Macau that North Korea was using for its illicit activities. They didn't send in the troops, they didn't drop a single bomb. They just designated the bank a money laundering concern. That's it. Almost overnight, every other bank in the world cut them off, terrified of US penalties. North Korea was financially strangled, and within months, they came crawling back to the nuclear negotiating table, all from a single signature. Or just look at the raw power unleashed against Russia. Russia had spent years building up what they thought was a financial fortress, over $600 billion in reserves. But here's the kicker. About half of that was in dollars and euros. So when the invasion happened, the West was able to just freeze it overnight. I mean, think about that.
reaching into a G20 nation's central bank and flipping a switch on half their money. It's absolutely unprecedented.
And it's not just countries, it's people. Take the oligarch Roman Abramovich. He had a $14 billion empire, protected by the most expensive lawyers in the world, specifically designed to avoid this kind of thing. And it didn't matter one bit. Once his name hit the list, his jets were grounded, his yachts were seized, and his accounts were frozen. His entire world was dismantled in weeks. And here's the key: there was no trial, no day in court, just designation. Now, this is where the story gets a lot more complicated and honestly, pretty uncomfortable. Because this incredible power, it isn't just used against dictators and warlords. And when it gets used, the collateral damage can be devastating for ordinary, innocent people. Yeah, just look at how broadly these tools have been used. Back in 2010, companies like Visa and MasterCard were pressured to cut off donations to WikiLeaks, and boom, 95% of their revenue vanished. In 2022, the Canadian government used emergency powers to freeze the bank accounts of truckers protesting vaccine mandates. And when you scale it up to entire countries, like cutting Iran off from the financial system or freezing Afghanistan's central bank assets, the result is often medicine shortages, economic collapse, and humanitarian crises. The real pain is felt by citizens, not necessarily the regimes in power. So, as you can imagine, the rest of the world has been watching all this go down. And whether you're in Beijing or Moscow or Brasilia, you're looking at this and coming to one very logical conclusion. We need an exit. We need an escape hatch from this system. And that has kicked off a global race to build one. Because this is the question every finance minister and central banker on the planet is asking themselves right now. Is our national wealth, held in dollars for safety and convenience, actually safe? Or is it a hostage to American foreign policy? The risk of getting cut off has become too big to ignore. So, what do? Well, you start building your own toolbox. And that is exactly what's happening. China is aggressively building out SIPs, its own alternative to the SWIFT messaging system. Russia has one too. The BRICS nations are openly talking about creating a new reserve currency. And maybe most importantly, we're seeing huge deals like Saudi Arabia selling oil to China getting done in Chinese yuan, not dollars. All of these are attempts to build a new set of financial pipes that don't run through New York. Which brings us to our final section, and the central paradox at the heart of all this. It's a fundamental trap that American policymakers now find themselves caught in. It's a classic use it and you lose it problem. See, every single time the US uses this dollar weapon, it shows the world how powerful it is. But it also sends a flashing red signal to every other country saying, hey, you could be next, you better find an alternative. So using the weapon actually speeds up the search for an exit. But if America stops using it, well, then it's not a credible threat anymore, and the power just evaporates. It's a heck of a dilemma with no easy answers. And that, really, is the thought to end on. This incredible, invisible empire of financial control might not end with a bang. It might not be defeated in some great power conflict. It may just break. It might fade away because the world decides to quietly reroute the plumbing, bit by bit. And one day, a lawyer in Manhattan will press that button, and nothing will happen. The power will simply be gone, not because it was conquered, but because it was used so much that the world decided it was time to build something else.